Okay, this is the second part of our iteration example. We're going to be working on the output list, input list, and pseudocode at this point. And from our previous discussion about the problem statement, it is true that we're going to have to modify the output list because the user wanted an oil. Let's make up a variable name here that's reflective of what this data is. Change offer message to come out to let the user know that their total purchase taking advantage of the offer for oil changes. Okay, and the input list would have to change too, because we would have to know what number of oil changes the customer was taking advantage of. So we've got those two changes added to the output list and input list. Otherwise, everything is the same because we're making an amendment or an enhancement here. Another change, and this is a big one, is that we are going to want to execute from a file rather than from the screen. So the user is not going to be entering a data anymore. So I'm going to keep this auto estimate as my driver module name, but the contents of that driver module are going to change. In fact, I'll just go ahead and put this down further because I know that won't be there. What's going to be in here will be some module that will get the file ready. Call it that. And a process file module. And then we're going to have to shut the file down. And then we're going to say end module. That's going to be our driver module now. It's changed. We have to add this layer in of this driver module that's going to process so that we have a place to put in the loop that will process the entire file. Now the first module in there that we're going to want to look at will be the get file ready. And that's going to be to open the file. There's only one file, so there's no reason to differentiate this file from any others. If there had been, we would have logically named the files so that we could say when we're going to open. The reason we have to do that instead of saying open all, well, we could say open all files, but if we're going to open several files and they're going to be at different places in the program where we're going to need them, we may not open them all in one place, so we would have to differentiate one file opening from another. But since we don't have to do that here, we won't. Okay, then we come down to process file. And in there, we're going to do our loop. And I'm going to choose to do a pretest loop. Most of the time for processing a file, we'll want to do a pretest loop because potentially the file could be empty. If you do a post-test loop, you're trying to process something that isn't there. So do pretest while. And notice the difference here between the end of file function, which is in VBA, and we just say while there are more records, and we leave it to the physical program to figure out how to do that. Most physical languages will have a way of doing that, so we expect to not have a problem doing that. Okay, so in here we're going to do the stuff that we were going to do in the last time. So this stuff right here. So I'm going to copy that and paste it there. Not sure why I copied it, but I did. So now we can get rid of it. Oops. Delete that and move the end module statement up. And we have forgotten the end of the loop, so we'll come in here and put end pretest. All right, so there's our loop module that's going to process the entire file. The next module that we will want to have is a get data module, which does not change except for the fact that we're tacking on one more variable called oil change number. Okay, so there's an addition there. And then find car module, this module right here doesn't change at all. It's the same, there's no effect to it. Find base price also is not changed. Find extra price, we are going to have an amendment to it, but we don't have that amendment until, or we can put it in at the very end. All of this that we just scrolled through here will not change, but we are going to have to put in some more code, and that code has to deal with determining the oil charge. Now, since that code is going to involve some complexity, and since we're not quite ready to code it, I'm just going to say put oil charge code here. And I'm going to come back and replace that when I figure out how to do that. But right now I'm just coming through. Everything else is pretty straightforward, so I'm going to make all those other changes that are easy. On the calculation of the car price, for instance, we are going to have an oil change charge to add in there. Once we've figured out what this code is, we'll come out and add it into the total price of the car. So that will be added. We're also going to want, in show results, we're going to want to output a total deduction. If you recall in the statement of the problem, it would come out just ahead of the output of the car model and the total price. And it's that message that will say that you're taking advantage of the oil change charges. So in figuring out where to put that, we've got an else if for the sunroof and an else then for the car model. But this message is going to come out, it's not exclusive of this message. So if we were to put an else if and put out a message for the oil change, it would be the case that we could only have one of those messages coming out. But this is going to be not exclusive, as I said, of this, so it should be added in this without an else if. It should be done also. So that means that we're going to change, and I'm going to come up here to make that change. I'm going to indent the if test for the sunroof, etc., for that package, and I'm going to have just an else sitting there, and we'll put this out. And then down here I'm going to end this if. So now what I've got, it's a little funny because I didn't, let me see if I can change this so it'll read a little better. There. The indentation isn't quite, it was okay because the output statement where the output keyword was indented, but the rest of it wasn't. And now it's all indented, so it looks better at this point. We can tell what we're doing. So now what we have is an if statement that will output that message. We no longer, because it's not exclusive anymore, we no longer have to have this in here, so I'm going to delete that. And the next thing we need to do is to put in another if. This if will be for the statement that says we're taking advantage, letting the customer know they're taking advantage of the oil charge package. So the way we're going to test for that is if oil change number, that is the value that they've, remember that's the input value from the customer. If that's greater than 1, we know that they're taking advantage of that. And we'll come in and say output. Now the message has something about you're taking advantage of the oil change package, and it also includes in there the total deduction that they're going to save. So we're going to just put deduction total, which is the variable I guess I'm going to use, in there and output it. And it's also not exclusive, so we're going to end this if so that it will come out. If it's true that they're taking advantage, it will come out in combination with, also they might be taking advantage of the sunroof, leather seats, custom speakers, and the retractable child seat. So now we have those both coming out, and we also want to output at the end the car model and total price. We still want to do that, and we can put it in here like this. We do not have to repeat it in each one of these because they're not exclusive. So this will come in and say output the convertibles do not come with sunroof, else it would do the rest. And if it does the rest, it would come in and say, oh, did you take advantage of this package? Yes, you did. We'll output that. Then did you also take advantage of the oil change package? Yes, you did. We'll output that. And then we'll output the car model and total price at the very end, car price at the very end, regardless of which, if any of these packages the customer took advantage of. So this now is a fairly major change to the show results module, but I think it will handle what we need to do. And we're going to take a break at this point. We need to come back and solve for this. The oil change code goes here. We don't have that code yet. We're going to have to do some reasoning to figure that out. And what I want to do is show you how to do that. So this terminates this portion.